What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show. Me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com. And today I'm back with another preview. And I'm looking ahead this time to the PFL MENA finale. This card goes down over in Saudi Arabia on November 29th. It's previously been obviously a separate card by itself, but this time it's actually going to be with the PFL Global card, plus an undercard underneath both of those as well. So it's going to be a long day and a long night of mixed martial arts. But for today, I'm going to look at the PFL fights by themselves and look at some of the undercard fights as well. And I'll have another video looking ahead to the PFL Global, just because there's so much I didn't want to cram it all in. And there's a lot of title fights. A lot of people obviously deserve the respect of having their fights broken down a little bit further, and I am here to do that. Obviously, we've covered all of the MENA, PFL Europe, and PFL Global events throughout the year. So we said we would do it in full as well as we approach the back end of the year. And I'll tell you what, we'll have a talk about the PFL Global card as well. Obviously, that maybe that video is already out. It's a great card, a lot of great fights, but this one, this is the sort of card I think, as someone who covers the sport from the ground up, it's one of those cards that if I tell you it's good, it's good. Maybe you haven't seen some of these fighters, maybe you don't know a lot of these fighters, but you will soon. You will at another time. You will next year. You will the year after. There are some really talented guys, really fun guys on this as well. And I'll tell you what, they've probably, for PFL, and there's one injury in this, but for the finales, for all the fights this year on the global side of it, and PFL Europe is coming up in a while, so we'll leave that for a while, but they've been not lucky I suppose lucky is it. There hasn't been many injuries, there hasn't been many pullouts and everything like that. Now, after I record this, someone will pull out, but all of the fighters this year in the global card as well, they were all, I believe they were all like, what was it, 3-0 or 4? No, 3-0, wasn't it, to get to the finale. It's been a really, really straightforward, good year for the PFL, and I would say the same in the PFL MENA. The only difference in the PFL MENA is a lot of people have gone to the next level. A lot of people have overtaken. I spoke about it at the start of the PFL MENA year and the PFL Europe as well, that sometimes these fights, you find a guy, a guy like Jalal Al-Shahlawi, who didn't make it to the finale, right? Who has 25 fights, and he could be fighting a guy like, let me just pick out a random one on this, Mohammadseifi, who is 6-1 now, started off, with 5 fights or whatever. But this year, a few of those guys have actually won and got through and beaten the more experienced guys, and obviously we'll get into that as we go here. So do you know what does that show? That shows that the PFL, first of all, there's good matchmaking, but also the young up-and-comers in the region are starting to beat the guys who've been there for a long time, who were the young up-and-comers 5 or 6 years ago, and that's a real good sign. And manna from heaven, I suppose, if you're the PFL, because you have the next raft of talented fighters from this area, as well as Europe, as well as America and everywhere else coming through, and that's exactly what you want, and you wouldn't be you wouldn't be turned up your nose at great fighters from any area. So they've done a great job of that. Right, let's get into the breakdown. Let's talk about some of these fights. So the one injury that happened was Islam Reda, who was supposed to fight here against Abdal Alhyasat in the let's call it the main event of the PFL MENA, and he's been replaced by Abdullah Al-Qahtani, and Al-Qahtani, funny enough, actually fought Alhyasat last time out, went to a decision. From memory, it was a close enough decision. I actually went back and I was looking for a fight and I couldn't find it. I actually watched, there was a highlight package of it, and it didn't look as close in the highlights as I remember live, but we'll talk about that fight in a second. But just on both guys, first of all, Alhyasat is one of these young up-and-coming guys. He's 5-0 in his career now. 2 of those have obviously been this year, beating Al-Qahtani, beating Ahmed Tarak, and he's one of those guys that came over from the UAE Warriors as well. So his previous 3 fights were all in UAE Warriors. He only made his debut in 2023, in February 2023. You know, he had one amateur fight in the IMAFs in 2022. So that'll tell you an awful lot. And Al-Qahtani then is one of the more experienced guys. You know, he's 9-2. You know, he'd won 4 in a row before this. He fought in the PFL super fights at the start of the year. He won that fight. Then he fought Yazid Hassani. And he was able to win that as well. But he was one of the guys that came over from Brave. He had 5 fights, I think, in Brave before he made his way over to the PFL MENA series. He took part in it last year in 2023. And again, obviously, this year, and finds himself in the finale now. And he actually, funny enough, you know, Islam Reda was supposed to fight. He actually has a win over Islam Reda in the second fight of his career. And that was in 2018. He made his debut as well in 2018. So it's a very, very interesting fight altogether. So to just go through what both guys are like, first of all, and then we'll talk about the last fight and we'll talk about this fight. So Al-Qahtani's kind of a very loose, aggressive guy. He's big enough for the weight class as well. He's a grappler, some body lock takedowns. His counters are very aggressive. He's some very aggressive ground and pound as well. And that aggressive is the word. That word aggressive is the one that keeps coming up when you're thinking about him. Big, loose striking, but gets hit an awful lot. And that was his biggest issue, unfortunately, for him in the last fight these two guys had. And that was only in September as well. So, you know, it's obviously very interesting to see how they work with that. So Alhyasat on the other side of it then, big power striker, hard leg kicks, athletic, and, you know, power. But he's one of those special guys that, you know, what did I say he was again, 5-0? You know by looking at him that he is going to be, and maybe I didn't know it before that first fight, but I know it now. He's going to be a guy who has a really high ceiling because he has the 3 things really you need. Well, 3 of the things anyway you need to be a top level fighter. He has a real good technical ability. He has real good power, and he has a comfort level. I often talk about the comfort level. Comfort level is such an important part of mixed martial arts, and Alhyasat has that, and he's very, very, very good. So that fight, you know, as I said, win 15 minutes, but all the power shots were landed by Alhyasat. Like early in the fight, the redness on Al-Qahtani's face showed up very, very quickly. You know, those leg kicks played a big part in the fight. Got on top as well, got a couple of takedowns. And I think Al-Qahtani, like, what does he do, I think, to change this up? I think what he needs to do is make this a fight with the least amount of action as possible, right? Whether that is himself getting a takedown and getting on top, and, you know, let's put it, the least amount of action from Alhyasat. Get on top, push him against the cage, stand on the outside, use your footwork, get away, you know, maybe bank on your cardio. I believe these are 5-round fights as well. Bank on that rather than letting Alhyasat use his athleticism, use his speed, use his power on the inside. I think that's the way you approach this fight. You know, you have to approach it in the way that you're fighting a guy who's better than you. Now, that's a very odd approach for MMA, because mostly guys, you know, cod themselves into thinking they're the best fighter in the world, even if they aren't, right? Maybe that's a little bit easier to do when you just lost to a guy, right? There's a certain thing as well. I spoke to Fabian Edwards before he fought John Nablin again. Look, it didn't work out massively well for him, but he said there's something a little bit better about fighting a guy so quickly in a rematch that you've already lost to, that you can see something, adjust, and go again. You know, and I do think there is something to that. And obviously, as I said, it didn't work out that well, but I think that's the one advantage Al-Qahtani has here. I think everything else, it's hard to watch, you know, even the highlights back of that first fight and not think Alhyasat is going to have great success in this fight again. It's hard to think he's not going to hurt Al-Qahtani. It's hard to think he's not going to dominate this fight early. And, you know, the one thing missing off of Alhyasat's record is a finish. He's 5-0 with 5 decision wins. Will he get the finish this time over 5 rounds? I could see it, to be honest. So we'll go with Alhyasat as the pick there for the first fight on the PFL MENA. Right, the next one is probably 2 guys that maybe people respected and liked coming in, but maybe thought there's tough matchups in that division. Maybe they wouldn't end up there. So, and that last fight as well was featherweight. Sorry, I didn't mention Al-Qahtani and Alhyasat. This is the welterweight fight between Mohammed Al-Raq and Omar Al-Dafrawy. Al-Raq 7-0, 25 years of age. He fought Yusuf Abus and Amir Fazli this year. Fazli, one of the top guys in it, and he actually fought Al-Dafrawy as well before. He went to a decision back in 2023. So, again, another rematch here, and a very, very interesting one as well. Al-Dafrawy, though, I think Al-Dafrawy, since that fight, he's had 6 fights, and I think he's a very different fighter. And it's funny, it's only a year and everything like that, and he's been fighting for a very, very long time. But, you can obviously, you can tell something by that fight. And I went back and I watched that fight before the last event. And I'll tell you, the reason I say it doesn't tell you a whole lot is because I looked at that fight, looked at Al-Dafrawy, and I picked Jarrah Al-Shalawi to beat him, and then he knocked him out in a minute, or 3 minutes, of the first round. And that was after winning his first fight this year against Anthony Zidane. He also won in January. He had a fight last December, he had a fight last October, and I think that's the difference. He had a fight in July as well of last year. He's fighting a whole lot, and all those fights are since since the Al-Raq fight. So it's a very, very interesting matchup again. Al-Raq is, he's kind of this oddly shaped guy, muscular, big high hands, kind of odd stance, always moving, good trips and good ground and pound, counter jab and a front kick he throws, but he does get hit an awful lot, and you saw that, in the first fight. Al-Dafrawy then is a southpaw, fast 1-2s. The one thing I would say about him, and I've said this before, is maybe not varied enough. Although maybe that's a thing he's adjusting to as well and getting better. I certainly think in the last fight against Fazli that win 5 rounds, he was able to show an awful lot more in that fight than previous fights where he's had a few decisions, but especially his fight before that, he got a big finish in there as well. The other thing about him is he can be taken down. And if you're Al-Raq, maybe that's something you need to add in here as well. Again, certain fighters won't be able to deal with it. And you look at that last fight, the 1-2 of Al-Dafrawy, it's just so good and so fast, and so it's basic. And I mean that as a compliment more than anything. It's a real basic shot, and a real tough one for people to deal with. Now, you look at both guys and you think, okay, one guy has a win over the other. Has enough changed? And that's always the question. It was an interest. Which fight was it? Belal Muhammad and Vicente Luque. Is a fight I always looked at. You look at the first fight, Luque absolutely destroys Belal Muhammad, and Luque is here and Belal Muhammad's here. The second night of the fight, it's the other way around. And when it's only, I know I said a lot has changed, and there's been 6 fights and 6 wins, and 4 finishes in there as well. I stand by that, and I believe a lot has changed, but has enough changed? That's the thing. And it was a decision as well. It wasn't, it wasn't the biggest, for memory serves me right, it wasn't the biggest destruction in the world, but you have to look at it from Al-Raq's point of view. This is a guy who, even since then has had 2 big wins, has had a good amount of cage time, has beaten a guy as good as Fazli. But there's always a thing, and the other thing I would say about rematches, there's always that negativity entering it for the guy who won the first one, because there's the positivity that you won, but now there's I already beat this guy, I have to go on and beat him again, and that's always tough to deal with. And then for Al-Dafrawy, he's like, well, I lost to this guy, I've nothing to lose here. In fact, I've my loss to get back, which isn't a real thing, but that's what people say, and that helps him. So, with that said, I'm gonna I'll stick with Al-Raq. I'll go with the guy who won the first fight, and I think he'll do it again, but with no great certainty. There's a showcase fight in the middle of this thing between Hatan Al-Saif and Lilia Osmani, a female atomweight fight. It's obviously big for the region over there, and it's good that they're putting that on. But the standout fight for me on the PFL MENA is Ali Taleb against Rashid Alhyasat. This is a really, really, really top level fight. You know, Taleb coming out of Sweden is 11-1. He fought on the PFL Europe last year, and he ended up losing in the finale to Khurshid Kakurov, who is a top level fighter. And, you know, he's in the finale again this year, if memory serves me correct. When I watched him going into that last year, I was thinking this guy is not only going to win this, he's going to win the PFL Global, maybe. This guy is an absolute beast. And, you know, the only thing that stopped him is Kakurov, who's an absolute beast himself. But every fight before that and every fight since that, he's won. He got a first-round knockout against Jalal Al-Dajjah in his last fight at PFL MENA 3. He won a PFL MENA 1 as well against Naras Akbaz. So this guy is really, really, really good. And then Rashid Alhyasat, he's been around a little bit longer. He's 11-3, 32 years of age. You know, he also fought PFL Europe. He fought against Franz Malambo over there. Was that in the season? I think it was in the season. Was it a showcase? I'm not too sure. But he fought Franz anyway. That was his one fight over. He ended up losing. That was a split decision. But that was a pretty good fight, and he did well in that. Got a few takedowns against Franz as well. But like, if you look at some of the guys this guy has fought, you know, he fought Jordan Vucinic, who Jordan got signed to the UFC, didn't he? He did, and he had one fight in the UFC. He fought Yanis Kamuri, who is Jordan Vucinic, former cage warrior champion, as is Yanis Kamuri. So some really good guys there early in his career, and won 3 in a row now. Obviously, the last 2 in PFL MENA. Got a rear naked choke in the first of those in May. And this is a top level fight. So the way they fight, I went back and watched a couple of Haz fights just before this for a bit of a memory, and memory served me right that he's a power guy and a great wrestler. You know, good entries as well. You know, Franz is not the hardest guy in the world maybe to take down. He probably admit that himself. But I watched one of his other fights and he did a similar thing. You know, he wants to be on top, but his striking isn't bad at all. His striking is probably a tad underrated and probably better than it's given credit for. But I think the problem with him is he often, the lads I just mentioned there, Franz, Vucinic, the other guys, he often fights lads who are very, very good strikers, so he's going to be second best. And then he knows he has the wrestling acumen behind it. Why not use him? I think that's what he does. Ali Taleb on the other side of it then, out of Akira Kurasani's gym, just a beast. You know, switches stances, loads of fakes and feints. There's a very good straight right hand. Hits very hard, very good movement, very hard jab, great cardio, great chin. Tough guy to fight as well because of all of that. You know, no known weaknesses is the Ali Taleb thing. And, you know, it's a theme in mixed martial arts these days that a guy like this, who is as good as he is, he's only going to get beaten by another guy who is as good as he is or better than he is. You know, take Max Holloway and Volkanovski, take Volkanovski and Topuria type of thing. You know, that happens an awful lot. So the question is Rashid Haz better than Ali Taleb? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. I think Ali Taleb will win. I think his striking is very good. The one thing I would say, though, I think he does have great cardio, and he's shown that before, but over 5 rounds, if Haz can get a couple of takedowns, and if Taleb does get a little bit tired, like his style should be a tiring style, but it doesn't seem to phase him much. That could be an advantage for Haz. Now, I would not at all rule out Rashid Haz in here. Not at all rule him out. In fact, we'll look at the betting lines later on if they come out in later on in the week with the betting show. And I'll tell you, if Haz is a big underdog here, which I think he will be, you know, he might be worth a bit of a flyer bet on this week. But this is the fight to me. This is an absolute standout fight. I think this is the 2 most high level guys in this tournament, and they're both fighting each other, and that's absolutely fantastic. So this is the one to tune in for. Cannot wait for that. Absolutely great fight. And then the other finale is Mohsin Mohammadseifi against George 8, and that is for the lightweight strap. And again, I'll be honest, I like all of these fights, but this one is a very, very good one as well. Mohammadseifi is a guy from the start of this year. When I watched him for the first time, I immediately got a bit of a soft spot for him. I enjoy the way he fights. big power puncher, carries savage muscle on him. I described him a few times already in previews. He's like a young Hector Lombard, and I'll stand by that. He is. He's a varied striker as well, kicks, wheel kicks, and all of that. But his opponent, George Ade, is a top striker. He's good takedown defense until a point. You have to take a chance, but if you do take a chance against him, he can be taken down. But his level of movement, again, his variety is so good. This guy is a beast, and he's a little bit older. He's 34 years of age, fighting out in Lebanon, 10-4 in his career. He's only 4 knockouts, which is a little bit surprising when I looked that up. But like, he's won his last 3 in a row, and 2 of those knockouts have been in that. I was watching his fight with Al-Qahtani, and he was winning large portions of that fight until he kind of got taken down and he got beaten there, and that's kind of an issue for him, and he's been in there with some very good guys, the Lazy King, Mohammed Fakhreddinov, Fakhreddin, and he's been fighting since 2011, a few years off, a couple of times throughout that. This is his big opportunity. This is a big opportunity for him. But for Mohammadseifi, he's 35 years of age, surprisingly, to look at here. He looks like a guy who's about 22 years of age, to be honest. And, but still very young in his career. He only made his debut. Well, he made his debut in 2019, but he had one fight in 2021, one fight in 2022. And, since 2023, he's been on a bit of a roll. But very interesting fight. The heart says Mohammadseifi. The head says George Ade. Do you know what? I'm going to go with the heart. You have to go with the heart. More than Mohammadseifi, but no, George Ade will probably win that. But if I'm giving my official pick, we'll go with Mohammadseifi. So yeah, those are the big title fights, I suppose, on this. But there's some very good undercard fights as well. I'm not sure exactly how this is going to work out with the PFL Global, whether it'll be the undercard and then MENA and then the Global. But I suppose we'll find out on that. One of the standout fights for me is Mansour Barnaoui against Alfie Davis. What a great fight this is. I think for Barnaoui, he's 21-6 now, 32 years of age, and when he came over to Bellator after being in road, and he'd fought a lot around the place and fought some very good guys, KSW and other places. You saw that first win against Adam Piccolotti, he made mincemeat of him. And I thought to myself, and a lot of people are thinking this guy is going to be the champ. But it hasn't worked out massively well for him since. He's lost 2 fights in a row to my guy Bryn Primus and JJ Wilson. One last time out, though, in the Bellator Champion Series Paris fight. So he'll be coming in here looking to win. And do you know who he's fighting? He's fighting Alfie Davis, and a guy who's a hard guy to beat. 17-4. Fighting out a London shoot with the likes of Magic Norby and others like that, MVP and all that. Won 3 in a row at a draw before that, lost to Shabley before that, won 4 in a row before that. He'd beaten Akon Wanless, Oscar Onsworth, Thibaut Gouti and others as well. This guy, I like watching him fight. He throws some interesting techniques. He's a good technical fighter. I don't think he's the greatest athlete in the world. I don't think he's the strongest in the world. I don't think he hits the hardest. I don't think he's the fastest. But he always stays in there. He's probably the toughest. He's up there with the toughest. And he's kind of the posh looking baby face on him. But he doesn't fight like that. And he's, again, a very tough guy to beat. You look at the skill set of Barnaoui, you look at the skill set of Davis, and you think Barnaoui should win that fight every time. But Barnaoui's the type of guy who loses that fight, and Davis is the type of guy who wins that fight. But which of those two things comes out on top? Will the talent come out on top, or will the, how would you put it, the grit and the determination and all that, will that come out on top? And not to say that Barnaoui doesn't have that, but I think Davis has it in spades. So I'm going to lean Barnaoui, but I wouldn't at all be surprised if Davis won that fight. Another very interesting fight is in the heavyweight division, Slim Trabelsi against Abraham Babli. Like Slim Trabelsi, I've known about Slim for a good long while. He fought Ryan Spillane from Ireland here in his second fight, and I know that both of these lads had big trouble getting fights young in their career. Like Trabelsi is, oh God, no. I said it the last time I did a preview for him, but he's Is it a wrestler or a judoka? I think it's a judoka, isn't it? But he was high level, you know, representing his country and talking about Olympics and things like that. Very good on the ground, unbelievable on the ground. Jeez, I should have looked that up before I did this, but my apologies. Go back to the last one, and people were complimenting me about it. We'll have it for the betting show. I'll remember for that. But this guy's a beast on the ground, and like Babley's a good fighter as well. 28 years of age. You know, he fought in Ireland. I was watching that fight, and he was very, very impressive in that one by decision. But he's some knockouts as well. Look, as good as Babley looks, he's fighting out of Manchester as well. As tough as he is, as hard hitting he is. I'm not picking anyone, and I mean anyone, to beat Slim Trabelsi until he gets to a very, very high level. So that's how much I think of him. He's a very good fighter. Couple of the other fights on the card. I really like some of these undercard fights. Jeremy Kennedy against Jesus Pinedo. Kennedy, 19 and 4, 32 years of age. You know, he had some time off there, like over the last few years. Fought once this year, once in 23, once in 22. You know, twice in 21, but once in 2020. And before that, you know, he was on a good run. He was in the PFL tournament and things. Very good fighter, you know, his wins over Aaron Pico and you know, the shoulder injury one, and Carvalho lost to Patricio last time out, and he's coming in here against Pinedo. Again, a guy who we have seen at the top of PFL, you know, his year last year was absolutely unbelievable, you know, winning a championship, beating Braga, Jenkins, Loughnane, after losing to Braga the year before. A really well-rounded fighter, hits very, very hard, and I think he, you know, I think he'll be a tough matchup for Kennedy at this stage of Kennedy's career. So I think this is going to be a real good fight on the feet, really, really, really good. And yeah, I'm gonna go with Pinedo to win that one. Castelo Vancinas is also on this card as well. He is fighting João Dantas. Who is out of Brazil, 28 years of age, 7-1. This is his first fight in PFL or Bellator. He has fought in LFA once. He ended up losing that fight, but he fought in Jungle Fight a good few times. You know, Vancinas has been unlucky, I think, over the last few years. He's won 3 of his last 4, losing to Douglas Lima, beat Baben last time out. You know, he has that big win over Fabian Edwards, and you just think, like, if Fabian was to win the title, he probably would have got a shot, but you know, don't know a whole pile about Dantas, but he looks like a guy who's a big finisher. Obviously, 7 wins, 7 knockouts. But Vancinas has fought a lot of those lads before and never been knocked out, so you'd have to fancy Vancinas in that one. And in the last fight I'm going to speak about here is Jose Perez against Acela Juge. Two guys who are talked a lot about. You know, 29 years of age, 9-1 is Perez. This is his second entry into the PFL after fighting in August of this year. It came from CFFC before that, you know, and won the championship in September 2023. This is a high level matchup. Like Acela Juge, you know, I asked Peter Queally who's the best guy. He's trainer. Who's the next guy? And he told me Acela Juge. You know, he lost his debut against Constantine Benita, probably the best Ono versus Ono fight I've ever seen, and he's won every fight since then. You know, Liam McCracken, what a performance from him last time out, and he beat him. Beat Jordan Barton, has won a lot of good fights, and he finally got a big finish there in his last one as well. This is a high level fight. I'm going to pick Acela Juge. I think he's a guy who's going to, in 5 fights time, I think Acela Juge is going to be so much better than he is right now. But there's going to be a stage where he just kicks and you're thinking, oh God, this guy is special. And I think that's coming soon. So Acela Juge is the pick there. All right, everyone. That's it from me. Looking forward to the PFL MENA card coming up. Hope you are too. Hopefully got you a little bit excited for it and we can all enjoy it on November 29th. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Good luck.